Hello.
Hey Sam, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Just getting ready for getting ready for 2 o'clock.
Here we go. We've been getting ready for this for a long time.
Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey Diamante, how are you?
Good. How are you? We're going to get started in just a moment.
All right.
Do we have Daniel and Lindsay? It doesn't look like it yet.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am Diamante Walker, the URA's Deputy Executive Director, and I would like to welcome you to the special board meeting on this day, June 10th, 2021. This meeting will be dedicated to the Lower Hill development by way of the FNB Tower takedown notices. And so right now we have Chairman Sam Williamson here with us, Representative Ed Gainey, and we are waiting for 2 more board members, and we will begin.
I'm here, Director.
Oh, all right, welcome.
Good afternoon. Looks like we are almost at a quorum with board members. Yeah, I don't see Lindsay on yet. Is she on yet?
Lindsay's not on yet, but you do have a quorum currently. We will check the participant room to make sure that she's not out there.
Okay, just give that 1 second and just let me know when we're ready to start.
She is in the process of logging on now.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. Before I do roll call formally, we just go through the agenda for today and a little bit of the context. I just want to note for the record, well, first, we are now formally calling to order the special board meeting of the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh for June 10th, 2021. I would note for the record that the URA board met in executive session on June 3rd to receive additional briefings from staff on Lower Hill matters. Because the URA board is committed to giving advance notice prior to considering any votes related to the Lower Hill, a meeting was also held, of course, 2 weeks ago on May 26th for the purpose of briefing the board and the community on this development. URA staff and the development team in that meeting gave thorough presentations on the proposed Lower Hill Block G developments and the Lower Hill LERTA development, Lower Hill LERTA District. We also received significant, and I think for the board, extremely helpful public comment throughout that meeting. And this meeting is a follow-up on that briefing. The purpose of today's meeting is for the URA board to vote on the actions that would be necessary to advance the block G-1, which is the proposed FNB Tower, and block G-4, which is the proposed public open space, to advance both of those to closing and to approve the actions that would be necessary to operationalize the Lower Hill LERTA District. So even though, it should be noted, the Block G development is located entirely within property owned by the SEA, the Sports and Exhibition Authority, the option agreement governing the entire development requires our board, the URA board, to give approvals as well prior to closing. Earlier this morning, the SEA board met and they voted, I believe, unanimously to advance both blocks G1 and G4 to closing. I think it's also worth noting before we even get started today that I think current URA leadership to a person consistently expresses the opinion that the option agreement represents a deal that we did not negotiate, and that we are not 100% happy with or satisfied with. But we also recognize the bleak reality that the failure to advance a deal could also undermine the community benefits that have been achieved and threaten to block progress on the Lower Hill for another generation of Hill District residents. So if today's actions are approved, block G1 and G4 will be the first projects to advance to closing on the Lower Hill under the option agreement with PAR. And there will be additional potentially blocks to advance, and each one of those that comes before us gives us additional opportunities to secure additional benefits for the Hill District. It is finally worth acknowledging, as I'm sure we will do throughout this meeting, the central role that the URA played in past actions leveling the Lower Hill under the Urban Renewal Program and under the Federal Highway Act, to build the since demolished Civic Arena and the I-579 highway, displacing, of course, thousands upon thousands of Hill District residents and businesses. And as we said 2 weeks ago, and many times in the past, any fair reading of history must conclude that the Hill District community is owed far more than we alone, even with this deal, can provide. However, we also want to recognize that many people have worked incredibly hard, diligently over the course of a long time, and will continue to work over the course of the future of this development to create opportunities for equitable consideration of community needs and to fulfill the commitments and promises that are laid out in the CSIP agreement. So with that, and I think I said this, but just wanted to again to reiterate for the record that we met in executive session on June 3rd to receive briefings from staff on issues related to this development. With all of that said, I see Lindsay now in the meeting, and so let the record show that a quorum is present. Representative Gainey is present. Councilman Lavelle is present. Director Powell is present. Director Hirsch is absent and unable to attend today's meeting. We have no minutes to approve at this meeting, so I think we roll right into public comment. We have received significant, extensive written public comment in advance of the meeting. Every single one of those submissions will be, if it's not already, made available on the URA's website. They've all been provided to the board and reviewed by board members in advance. We are not going to read them all aloud today because there are simply too many of them, and reading them all aloud would risk losing quorum later in the meeting when some members of the board have other commitments. But we also, of course, now have live public comment available. And I know some folks have signed up and registered in advance to provide up to 3 minutes of live public comment. And so I think, Diamante, I'll turn it over to you or whoever from staff is managing the public comment process.
So we have Dylan Sloat, who will help to manage the public comment period. I can tell you that the first commenter registered is Miss Tanya Ford, and I do think that she is in the waiting room. So we will see if she is able to join us. Tanya, are you there?
Hello,
Hello?
can
Yep,
you
we
hear
can hear
me?
you.
Yep.
Yes.
Sure can.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Tanya. We'll give you 3 minutes and I will start as soon as you start speaking.
Sure. I just wanted to make a comment as a business owner and homeowner in the Hill District. I fully support the Lower Hill project. I am speaking today to give full support to the developers to move forward with the G-1 and G-4 Lower Hill redevelopment site. Even though there were delays, I believe this plan will reconnect the Hill District in every way, especially economically with the greater downtown area. I believe the vision of the Lower Hill redevelopment by the developers. I also wanted to request additional community members or other non-profit organizations be considered to manage the LERTA funds. Please consider adding some new leadership to this task. There appears to be an overlap of people that are on the DRP, existing boards and organizations who make all the decisions involving the community. There needs to be additional community voices and ways for people to express their concerns and opinions. I think the co-chair of the LERTA fund should be voted on by the community members to ensure the accountability of who is going to manage these funds. I am eager to see this critical project move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I think
The next public commenter is Carmen Brown. Staff will work to elevate her to a panelist so that she can speak. I do not see her in the waiting room. So we will move on to the next public commenter, but we will certainly go back if we are able to locate her in the chat room.
Next is Rhonda Hall, I think.
All right, she is being promoted to panelist. All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I will be brief as I had issued public comment, written public comment at the last meeting on June 3rd. I'm in full support of the Lower Hill development. It's much needed development for the greater Hill District community. And I support it without delay. I also echo again comments I made about the LERTA fund, that there needs to be, I don't agree with the guidelines as they are written. I do believe there needs to be more accountability and transparency in terms of how the money is managed and how the money is utilized to help revitalize the middle and upper Hill District. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff, were we able to locate Carmen Brown in the chat?
I don't see her in there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm not
all
seeing
right.
her either.
Okay, all right. The next speaker will be Kimberly Ellis.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for your historic vote today. As you all know, I hold the very interesting and curious and powerful position of being a longtime Hill resident, as well as a president employee of Buccini Poland Group, and I'm very proud to represent them. But as I started this whole process, I've learned so much. And because I am a more visible member of the community, even before this process began, but definitely as this process has been elevated, I have become a sounding board for members in the community. I have learned a lot. I've talked to a lot of people I never spoke to. I am very disappointed by some of the things that I have heard have been going on in the community, but I'm also very inspired by other things that I have heard. And I think that we have a lot to sort out individually in our community around transparency and accountability. But even when I started this project and as I've moved along, I have discovered the integrity of Buccini Poland Group, the integrity of this entire development team. I'm very proud to work on the development team and to work on the inside, and especially with Hill District members, Bomani Howes, Janae Smith, and Lakeisha Bird, as well as Howard Graves. And I thought about you all. I thought about the role that you have to play today, like not just for this development project, but it is literally in your hands to help us redevelop the entire Hill District. You are who we have faith in. And I'm really, really grateful to all of you for your discernment, for your support, for your careful questioning, for your reasoning, for your own request for accountability, and for your transparency. The stars are aligned, and the stars could not be aligned if it were just those of us who were, now appointed to the developer. That wouldn't be enough. The stars would not be aligned. Just having the Hill CDC on the opposite side, that wouldn't be enough. The stars are aligned because there are Hill
1 minute left, Dr. Ellis.
Sure. The stars are aligned because there are Hill residents that have been working across this entire spectrum in government, in private corporations, in community, and many community voices, and across this sphere. So that is what I'm thankful for. I'm really, really thankful for this time period, and I'm really excited for what is to come. So I appreciate you all, and thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Celeste Scott, and we will promote her to panelist.
Celeste submitted in the Q&A that she submitted. So she said, please accept my written comment instead.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. The next speaker will be R.B. Bankston.
Good afternoon. I have a few comments. The policy and procedures guidelines has been commented upon, should not be approved by the URA board. There are several problems with it. The most important problem is that there's no accountability. The Hill District community did not see the guidelines. The advisory board that's written into the CSIP on page 23 has never been convened to write the guidelines. And there's no accountability. There's too many fingers in the pie, and they should be tabled. There's several reasons for that. The most important is that if you do this and you take control of the money away from the Hill District, that's money that we can use to help ourselves. The gentrification, the dislocation, gentrification, however you choose to characterize it, will be accelerated. My written comment shows you census tract data from 2010 to 2019, and it shows that we've lost 10,000 residents in that period of time. Oh, excuse me, 1,900 residents in that period of time. The comments that were presentations that were made on the 26th of May all had one thing in common, and that was who was in compliance with the CSIP. So you had the URA board say that the EMC said that the developer BPG was in compliance with CSIP. However, their survey was tainted because four of the 9 members on the EMC are current employees or former employees of the PINs who have hired BPG, the developer. So the integrity of BPG is not in question. The integrity of the EMC is in question when it comes to saying something is in compliance with the CSIP, which they obviously don't support because of their vote. So then the URA board says we have policy and procedures which are not in compliance with the CSIP, page 23. And BPG says, well, we're in compliance with the CSIP because we passed the Employment Opportunity Review Commission, which only looks
1 minute left.
Ordinances for the city of Pittsburgh. So in summary, please do not approve these guidelines and procedures. Let the community decide how they want to proceed. The land was taken from us. Now the money that's coming from the land, you want to take that from us too? I mean, come on, at some point in time, there has to be something that's fair, equitable, and reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Leonard Hammonds from Representative Jake Wheatley's office.
Good afternoon to the board and to everyone. I have comments from Representative Jake Wheatley. As you know, I have had the opportunity to work with the Hill CDC for over a decade. In fact, when they were rebuilding and putting themselves back together, I worked alongside them as they began their long journey back, and I saw how difficult it is for Black-led community-driven organizations to fulfill their mission while struggling each and every day for resources to barely get by. I know their struggles, and I know the commitment and leadership they provide for our community. As a downstairs neighbor to their office, I can tell you that they are one of the hardest working and determined group of community workers I've experienced during my tenure as state representative. As they led community development agent, as the lead development agency in the Hill District, they face difficult decisions every day. Through the Hill CDC's leadership, the Hill District has garnered millions of dollars of public resources that will come more and more evident over the next 3 years. This month, they will be under construction as the largest investment that has happened on Center Avenue in the last 50 years. The new Granada Artist Apartments and Retail. They consistently hold community meetings, and they give Hill District residents a powerful voice with transparency. No person or organization is perfect. And clearly, this is an imperfect situation when inherent inequity relative to the deal structure. But even with that, there is no question that the Hill District has greatly benefited from the advocacy and hard work of the Hill Community Development Corporation. The leadership of the Hill CDC, along with Councilman Daniel Lavelle, helped to secure the LERTA funds. And while some may look at what we do here today as happenstance, it's because of their leadership, and we are even here today for these reinvestments. For these reasons, I am fully support the Hill CDC as the permanent co-chair and for 4% of the total fund. From the very beginning, I have stated that it's in the best interest of the community,
1
city,
minute left.
and region that have fully developed Lower Hill. Said cannot be done without the full participatory process that allows for all various voices within our neighborhood to participate. As stated before, there is no perfect person, no perfect process, or perfect plan, but we all agree it's a perfect time to come together to build a perfect community together. I fully support moving forward this development with the understanding that more has to be done to lock in commitments that all of us share. I want to thank the Penguins ownership, their development team. I especially want to thank Vince and FNB for their partnership and willingness to stay at our table to continue to build and strengthen real partnerships. Some may look at our disagreement as a sign of our partnership does not work. However, I look at our disagreements in fact that we keep coming back together to continue to build and show that this partnership can work for real. So I commend all the board members, all the staff of the URA, the Hill CDC, the Penguins, and all of its partners, most especially the residents of the Hill District for all their labor. I look forward to staying at our collective table and working to make all of these commitments come true. Thank you.
Thank you. And Sam, that concludes live public comment.
Thank you very much. Do we have the ability to identify any additional public comment, if there is any? As I said earlier, we are not planning to read. We are not planning to read the public comment, the written public comment that we have received. It is publicly available as it is distributed to the board. There's a lot of it, so we're not going to read it all out loud during the meeting. But do we have an ability to identify anybody who didn't register in advance and wishes to submit live public comment now? I see that Marimba would like to make public comment. So can we give Marimba 3 minutes?
So Daniel typically handles live public comment real time in the meeting, and he is off today. So I'm gonna see if that makes it a little bit more challenging, but we'll see what we can do here. If I could get the staff on the call to look in the chat and try to locate.
Hello.
Yep.
Okay,
There you
perfect.
go.
Thank you. This is Marimba Lyons, and I'd like to provide public comment on the status of a signed community reinvestment plan with the Lower Hill Development team. There has been some information going around to suggest that a signed document has been completed. And yesterday, the Hill CDC received a document outlining the community benefits for Block G-1 and Block G-4. Given that we just received the document yesterday, we have not had an opportunity to review it in full. And my early feedback is that there are a couple of areas of improvement shown and a couple of areas of improvement needed. I do believe with your support today that we can feasibly reach agreement prior to final transfer of title. However, we need your help. We need the help of the URA Board of Directors and our elected officials in order to secure that condition. It is critically important that we have job opportunities beyond construction, hospitality, and building service for residents, and that Black-owned and Hill District businesses have a clear opportunity to participate in the future of the site, as this is the Hill District neighborhood, and we should be intentional at every step to ensure that fact is acknowledged in the development. No one should feel like a visitor in their own neighborhood. We must also remember that the promised $5 million Opportunity Zone Fund for the Hill District community must have substantial designated community voice so that any funds are not used to accelerate gentrification and to displace existing residents of the Hill District. If we can make progress on these goals and we strive for agreement before closing, I believe we have a viable path forward. I must comment on the $10 price point for blocks G1 and G4. As you know, this is some of the most valuable land in the city, region, and arguably country. While some have stated that the price point was determined long ago in a 203-page option agreement, the public disclosure of that price point is recent. We must collectively agree that undervaluing land in Black communities is an ugly remnant of our darkest days in banking and government-sponsored
1 minute left.
Of land and opportunity from Black people. We must strive to repair and restore the past at every turn. We are in one of those moments right now. And you have the power to help us to turn that corner. Are you going to allow land in this historic Black community to further be undervalued and deny proper community benefits to the Hill District community and residents? That is the centralmost question for today. It's untenable to both transfer land for $10 and refuse to require the development team to agree to proper community benefits. I say that this is the most centralmost question today because we cannot reasonably or rationally do that and claim to believe in equity. Please condition your approval on a signed community reinvestment agreement with the original signatories of the CSIP and appropriate members of the development team to ensure proper community benefits for the Hill District before final closing and transfer of land. So I am again saying that you can approve, but we are just asking you to condition your approval and to work with us over the next 2 weeks to get a document that they sent yesterday counter executed. Finally, I think it would be time well spent to determine
A few seconds here.
Sure. I think it would be time well spent to determine a clearer and more timely process of community review in relation to public agency approval and the development review panel process to avoid unnecessary contention in the future. Please consider including a condition that addresses that matter as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see in the chat Felicity would like to give live public comment as well.
Thanks, Julie.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I am here to give an update from the Development Review Panel on the status of review for the project. Since the URA special briefing on the Lower Hill held May 26th, the DRP committee was able to meet with the BPG team and Clayco Capital to discuss a number of items, including public comments that have been made disparaging the DRP process and a commitment to cease doing so. The path forward for the development team to reset in the process and continue review. The DRP committee met with the development team yesterday evening to reiterate the role of the DRP and its assessment of projects against the community's master plan and the CSIP, the many hours its members volunteer, and the seriousness of their work, as well as to reiterate their request for the documentation needed that provides sufficient detail to evidence progress in the development team's commitments that has not been received thus far. The DRP committee members are seeking to close gaps so that they can fulfill their role to determine compliance with the master plan and the CSIP. As a first step, we want to acknowledge receipt of an updated term sheet received yesterday, noting that the DRP committee members have not yet had a chance to review it in detail. To reiterate, the DRP committee's review is a technical assessment against the community's guiding documents. Decisions are not made as to whether any member of the DRP committee likes or supports the project, but rather how the project objectively measures against our community's guiding documents. It is the role of the DRP process to hold development projects accountable, regardless of who the developer is and regardless of whether organizations, businesses, and individuals from the community are participating in the development project. The DRP committee is awaiting the documentation that was discussed last night, followed by future in-person meetings to walk through those documents with the goal of making progress toward a third DRP presentation. The DRP committee wants the project to be a success, but in order to do so, that project must measure up favorably against the master plan and the CSIP. In addition, I would ask that, and this is separate from the DRP, I would ask that the board reconsider reading public comment, but thank you. Written public comment. My apologies.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? You can identify yourself, I think, either in the chat or in the Q&A. I don't know if raising your hand does it. I'm not sure if we can see you if you raise your hand. But is there anyone else who'd like to address the board or provide public comment live? Give it another second or so. Last call. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board or provide live public comment today? Okay. Seeing, I think, none. don't see anyone else who wants to provide live public comment. So I think that we are going to move into the staff summary of what it is we're actually voting on today. First, an announcement around the First Source Center grand opening that happened recently, and then what just in terms of what to expect throughout this meeting, staff is going to provide a sort of summary, walking us through again what's being proposed for Block G1 and G4 and the LERTA, and then we'll have board discussion around the proposed votes. So I think Diamante, are you covering the First Source Center?
Actually, Julie's going to cover this portion of the presentation.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks. I'll take this one. Yeah, so we just wanted to note earlier this week, the First Source Center grand opening was held. It's located in the former Hill House Association building and is slated to, bring job opportunities, career connections, and many more workforce development services to the Hill District community as part of the Lower Hill redevelopment. The term sheet for Block E and other developments that was executed in 2019, I believe, required PAR to assist partners for work in locating a First Source Center on or near the option premises. So just wanted to note that. Go ahead to the next slide, Dylan. So I just wanted to take a couple of moments to go over the key elements of the development projects. So Block G1, the FNB Tower, is about 1.39 acres. The redeveloper is proposing a 26-story office tower that's about 418 feet tall. It'll consist of 437,000 square feet of office space, 35,000 square feet of retail space, 108 parking spaces. The redeveloper and the property owner is a newly single-formed, single-purpose entity called Office Partners 23 Block G1 LLC. It's a Delaware corporation, and the ownership of the newly formed single-purpose entity is comprised of a joint venture between BPG, PAR, Clay Cove Capital, and FNB. After the real estate closing, the redeveloper will file a declaration of condominium to create 4 commercial condos on the site. The anchor tenant is set to be First National Bank. They will lease approximately 165,000 square feet of space in the building. The redeveloper is seeking LEED Silver certification for the tower, and total development cost is estimated at $230 million. Next slide, please. Block G4 is proposed to be 0.67 acres of publicly accessible open space. G4 is envisioned as a series of terraced areas and stepped pathways that transition up to a central lawn area. In the future, the redeveloper plans to connect this green space to the future urban open space on Block F. The redeveloper is the same as G1, Office Partners. The owner will be an entity called the Lower Hill District Conservancy. The Lower Hill District Conservancy is a to-be-formed Pennsylvania unincorporated association that will serve the purpose of owning and maintaining public open space on the Lower Hill site. Members of the Conservancy will consist of the future owners of developed property on the Lower Hill site. The term sheet that was distributed yesterday from BPG adds an addition. The Hill District will have 2 representatives on an advisory committee of the board of the Conservancy. So the board will create a programming, operations, and activations committee before G4 improvements are completed. And the representatives will be appointed by Councilman Lavelle or by recommendation of the CSIP EMC. The committee will assist the board with delivering CSIP goals related to small business engagement, MWBE contracting, and cultural and legacy initiatives. The total development cost for Block G4 is estimated at $3.3 million. The URA board has not formally voted on this project yet. The redeveloper is seeking both preliminary and final approvals today. At the May 26th briefing, we heard concerns from the board regarding this privately owned, publicly accessible open space. We heard the board would like to clarify its intent for this space to be accessible to the public to assemble under the First Amendment. To ensure this, the URA has added additional language into one of the resolutions for G4 today. And then let's go to the next slide, please. So as we discussed 2 weeks ago, staff is seeking 4 approvals related to Block G1, 4 approvals related to Block G4, and 4 approvals related to the LERTA. Chairman, would you like me to talk through each of these and what they mean?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
Great. So the first action we'll be seeking with G1 is final approval pursuant to the comprehensive option agreement among the URA, the SEA, and PAR of a conceptual development plan for the takedown of Block G1. This action would give PAR the right to develop Block G1 in a manner consistent with the plans presented to and approved by the Department of City Planning for the FNB Tower. This is consistent with the option agreement between the URA, the SEA, and PAR, which granted PAR the right to purchase Block G1 from the SEA, its current owner. Board action number 2 related to Block G1 is final approval of Office Partners 23 Block G1 LLC as the redeveloper for the takedown of Block G1. This action approves PAR's designated redeveloper for Block G1, Office Partners. It gives Office Partners the right to buy the land, finance the real estate deal, have builders build and manage the FNB Tower development process from beginning to end. Pursuant to the option agreement, PAR is able to act as the master developer, or it can designate 1 or more redevelopers for the site. In this case, the Buccini Poland Group is their selected commercial developer. The single purpose entity that was formed for the purposes of redeveloping and owning the real estate on Block G1 and G4 is Office Partners, the entity that's related to BPG and PAR. I want to note that Board Action 2 cannot advance unless and until Board Action 1 is approved. Board Action 3 we're seeking is final approval of the takedown of Block G1. This action authorizes the SEA to transfer the title for Block G1 to PAR. Board action number 3 cannot advance to a vote unless and until Board Actions 1 and 2 are approved. The final board action that we are seeking with Block G4 is that the proper officers and agents of this authority are authorized and directed to take all actions and execute such documents as are related and proper to affect the terms of the foregoing. This means that provided Board Actions 1, 2, and 3 are approved, the URA's Board Approval of Action 4 allows URA leadership and staff to sign documents necessary to get the development to closing and through post-construction. So those are the 4 actions that we're seeking on G1. Should we go on to G2 and G4 and explain the other set of actions?
Yeah, why don't you walk through all of them and then we'll open it up for board questions and comment.
Got it.
Question.
Okay, so we're also seeking 4 approvals related to Block G4. Number 1 is similar to G1, but it includes preliminary approval as well. So item number 1 is preliminary and final board approval pursuant to the comprehensive option agreement among the URA, the SEA, and PAR for the conceptual development plan for the takedown of Block G4. This action gives PAR the right to develop Block G4 in a manner that's consistent with the plans presented to and approved by the Department of City Planning for public open space. This is consistent with the option agreement between the URA, the SEA, and PAR, which grants PAR the right to opt to purchase Block G4 from the SEA, its current owner. Item number 2 is preliminary and final board approval of Office Partners 23 Block G1 LLC as the redeveloper in the Lower Hill District Conservancy, a to-be-formed Pennsylvania unincorporated association as the property owner and the conservator for the takedown of G4. This action permits Office Partners the rights to finance the real estate deal, have builders build the project, and manage the public open space development process from beginning to end. Further, it gives ownership and management of this public open space to the to-be-formed conservancy. Office Partners and the conservancy were selected by PAR for these roles. Similar to G1, please note that Board Action 2 for G4 cannot advance to a vote unless and until Board Action number 1 is approved. The third action that we're seeking for G4 is final board approval of the takedown of Block G4. This action authorizes the SEA to transfer title for Block G4 to PAR. Board Action 3 cannot advance to a vote unless and until Board Actions 1 and 2 are approved. And the final action for G4 is the same as G1. It says that the proper officers and agents of this authority are authorized and directed to take all actions and execute such documents as are related and proper to affect the terms of the foregoing. So again, provided that board actions 1, 2, and 3 for G4 are approved, the URA's board approval of action 4 allows URA leadership and staff to sign documents necessary to get the development to closing and through post-construction. I want to note on the first board approval that the board action number 1 is where we added the additional language around public assembly. So we added language into your resolution that says that this resolution is further conditioned upon commitments acceptable to URA staff that block G4 will remain open and accessible for public uses, including but not limited to public assembly. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. And then we have 4 actions we're seeking related to the LERTA. The first action is authorization to amend the LERTA by entering into the First Amendment to the Declaration for Restrictive Covenants, and authorization to accept funds and execute any documentation necessary for the authority to administer the LERTA pursuant to the cooperation agreement regarding the Lower Hill LERTA District. If approved by the board, this action allows URA staff to update the recorded LERTA declaration to reflect the November 2019 letter agreement that permits PAR to keep 50% of the value of the real estate taxes generated from future Lower Hill site development, the retained amount, for eligible uses identified in the retained amount guidelines. Board action number 2 related to the LERTA is approval of the Lower Hill Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance District retained amount guidelines. If approved, this action sets forth the eligible uses of the retained amount and the processes which PAR must follow to utilize the retained amount. Board action number 3 is approval of the optionees application for the proposed retained amount investments that were submitted to the URA on May 25th for authorization to use the retained amount funds for such investment. LERTA board item 2 must be approved prior to or simultaneous with this board item. If approved, this action allows PAR to use the retained amount funds to develop and construct the applied for uses. The final board item is approval of the Greater Hill District Reinvestment Fund guidelines. If approved by the board, this action will result in the adoption of the guidelines for utilizing LERTA-derived funds not retained by PAR for the Greater Hill District Reinvestment Fund. Fund monies shall be made available for eligible projects and investments in the Hill District community. And I have one thing I wanted to note about the LERTA. Our LERTA council asked us just to make one small clarification to our director's report. So as the board saw, we do have a signed updated term sheet from FNB, and we continue to work with the redeveloper to get the LERTA monetized at the financial closing and maximize the LERTA funds in order to maximize the community benefit. Our LERTA council just wanted to note for the board that the current term sheet has a number of assumptions that are subject to change, such as the structure and interest rate of the reserved amounts, which could affect the net amount available for the retained amount and the reinvestment fund. Staff will continue to work with the redeveloper toward the monetization of the LERTA. So that concludes staff presentation. Are there any questions for staff?
Thanks, Julie. So we can open this up now for board discussion and questions. I think I would first ask Councilman Lavelle if you want to share your thoughts and any questions you might have.
Sure. Thank you. What I will, so just, this is fun. So I spent the last 2 days on the phone a lot discussing the Lower Hill project in many ways in respect to the $10 sale figure that's in the SEA's option agreement, my thoughts on the development as a whole, why I've been open on willing to support and move forward. So yeah, I would like to just sort of think out loud for a second. And I think it's also important to provide context, at least from how I see it of how we got here. And then maybe have further discussion from there, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
If you indulge me, I'll try to be brief. So this deal, if I'm not mistaken, and you spoke to this at the very beginning, Sam, was brokered back in 2007. It was former Governor Rendell, County Executive Honorado, and Mayor Ravenstahl who actually created this. And it was done behind closed doors in concert with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and most importantly, without any form of community input. The most basic elements of the deal, especially for today's purpose, were that one, the Penguins got the development rights to the land and were guaranteed the parking revenue from the site. Two, when it was time to take down a parcel of land, an appraisal was to be done to determine the sale price. However, thirdly, and maybe most importantly, the Penguins were given a $15 million credit towards the cost of the land. And also that credit in the agreement stated that whatever portion of the line of credit that was not used, the local government, meaning us city taxpayers, owed the Penguins the difference in cash. This literally meant that if no development occurred, we would have owed the Pittsburgh Penguins $15 million. And assuming development did occur, we would probably owe them anywhere between $8 to $10 million, because what we quickly sort of came to understand when the first proposed development was being contemplated, which was the US Steel headquarters at that time, was there at no point when the land was going to appraise for the credited amount. Thus, when the opportunity arose, maybe around 2017, 2018, to renegotiate portions of the option agreement, governmental officials, did so. And most importantly, the $15 million credit was stricken. And yes, in its place was a nominal $10 fee. But to be clear, the Penguins were never going to pay for the land. The deal was inked long before any of us were at this table. The difference now is though, although admittedly they're not paying for the land, we're also not paying them tens of millions of dollars to develop it. It's also worth noting that the deal was made when the former electeds were all trying to find ways to keep the Penguins in our city, and pressure was mounting to put together a financial package to do so. And this was all after their failed attempt to secure a casino license for a casino that they wanted to build on the Lower Hill. And in fact, over the years, there have been many well-documented attempts to take land from our community and to plan and develop that land without our community's best interests. I know how easy it is for us today to look at this and say this is another one of those moments where downtown interests and self-serving organizations are once again taking land from us without our involvement. And I can assure you that is not the case. This is literally a culmination of work that started well before I ever took office, when Representative Jake Wheatley, Reverend Johnny Monroe at the time, Reverend Glenn Grayson, Dr. Kimberly Ellis, Marimba Lyons, Brenda Tate, and a host of others stood together against the casino and concerns with what was going to happen with the Penguins development, and stood together and demanded that there be real community investments and partnerships for any agency, organization, or team that would have the rights to develop our sacred land called the Lower Hill District. Now, some will have you believe that today's vote can somehow overturn the years and years of decisions and legal maneuvering that has led us to this point. But I will simply say, although we didn't have much to do with setting the parameters of this deal back then, we did have a lot to do with making this a much better deal for our community now, by working with our citizens to fight and get the community benefits that were highlighted earlier in this presentation and that we spoke of numerous of times as it relates to the actual term sheet. I specifically want to thank the Executive Management Committee and the Development Review Panel, for their role in working to secure those benefits. With that said, I also want to thank all the residents of the Hill District, which there's clearly too many to name, for their hard work, their leadership, their commitment to ensuring our community voice and interests are a part of this development now and beyond. As we all know, no one person, organization, or idea could totally satisfy all the diverse interests and concerns shared in any community, especially a community such as ours. I have worked and will continue to work with all who want to be a part of our efforts. As just one of the elected leaders in the Hill, I've tried to make sure the most critical needs and concerns that I've heard or witnessed are part of any conversation or process that has been presented. And today I'm ready to stand with many of my Hill District residents who aren't always the most vocal or involved, but are just as critical to those who are. With that being said, it is worth noting that we, meaning us at the URA, have received a substantial amount of input into this project, some expressing concerns or objections, and many expressing the wish to move forward. And as of 1:30, and correct me if I'm wrong as someone, I tried to keep count of all the recommendations that came in, but as of 1:30 today, accounting for both the May 26th hearing and the hearing today, June 10th, I counted only 5 people that were against the project, and I'm looking, and I counted 60 that were in support of the project. With that being said, I want to thank all who took time to call in or write, but I do believe the sentiment is clear that the community is ready to move forward today, and thus I will stand with them and vote yes today. But I readily and openly admit that this is not a finished product, nor has it been a perfect process. And there is still more work to be done and more to get accomplished. Specifically, and I'm sort of lifting up Ms. Malayan's points that she spoke about earlier. Specifically, it's my intent to work with the developer to secure a reoccurring revenue stream for the Hill District, something akin to $1 a car. It is also my intent to work with the developer on the Opportunity Zone Fund, to secure investments for the Middle and Upper Hill District, as well as ensure property community input as requested. And then lastly, it is critical for me that we ensure the URA that any dollars that come in above the projected LERTA amount be secured for the actual community. Lastly, let me say that whenever we have to make decisions like today, and I'm speaking to the rest of my fellow board members, there will be those who support the decision from within our community and those who do not. I believe it is our job, those around this table and those who are part of the process, to look for what is best for the majority and then move accordingly so that our community's aspirations and goals can be materialized. And I believe if we're honestly doing that, then we should be voting yes to move forward today. Lastly and quickly, the LERTA guidelines have come up for discussion. So I also just want to take a quick moment to speak to that as well. It was 2010 when I had a meeting with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this is back when the arena was actually still standing. And we made a deal that I would work with them and lead an effort to both defeat the historical nomination of the arena, clear its way for demolition so that we could rebuild this site if they agreed to help me build Black wealth. Because my primary goal and objective was to leverage the Lower Hill development for the economic social benefit of the Middle and Upper Hill District. And we agreed to that. They said to me after we agreed, what does that mean? I said, I have no idea, but I'm gonna get back to you. The first call I made after walking out of that office was to the Hill CDC. And I called them and said, I need your time, your effort, your talent to help me think through a whole lot of stuff as it relates to this development. And they agreed. Specifically, remember, Lions agreed. I then made additional calls, and we ended up putting together a working group. The Hill District Consensus Group was at the table. Bonnie Lang at the time was there. Jason Matthews at the time from the Hill House Economic Development Corporation, and a number of other folk that we assembled to begin thinking through what it looked like to leverage this development. And the CDC then spent the next 4 years, almost every other Friday, I believe, is when we met, for about 2 to 3 hours every Friday, working with me, assisting me, helping me help fight and argue for the benefit of the Hill District community. Even once we got to an agreement, which is now commonly referred to as the CSIP agreement, there were documents that had to go before the Planning Commission. And it was at that time that many within the community said they wanted the Planning Commission to put in the back of the, and I can't think of what it's called, I apologize, but the document that governs how this site is to be developed, that is held at the Planning Commission, that they wanted an addendum with the CSIP attached to it, and the Planning Commission wouldn't do it. It was at that time that I, along with actually Kevin Ackland, the PLDP, someone just put into the text, thank you, the Preliminary Land Development Proposal is what it's called. It was actually that time where Kevin Ackland, I believe, was still over at the mayor's office, where we were talking about creating a TIF district for the Lower Hill site. We then started talking about a LERTA district for the Lower Hill site, but we hadn't yet legislated it because it had to be legislated. But the CDC, being concerned that a lot of what we had agreed to wouldn't get materialized, filed a lawsuit. And part of that lawsuit was creating the LERTA. And they took it upon themselves, even when many said, don't do that, to file that lawsuit on behalf of our community. I say all that just to give context again to how we got to where we are, is as to why I'm comfortable providing leadership, or excuse me, having the CDC provide leadership around the LERTA table, as well as receive what is 4% of a total fund, so that they can actually go about continuing to do the work for this community without scrambling for resources. What I will also simply acknowledge, and then I'll get off my diatribe. I apologize for going long. What I will lastly say is also recognize that many in the community also have concerns, understandably so. They have concerns that what's been fought for will not be mismanaged. They have concerns that what has been fought for, they will be able to benefit from, that they'll be able to have money invested in their businesses that they want to get off the ground, that they'll have money invested in homes that need repaired, all the things that we've talked about. And towards that end, I'm promising that I will ensure that all our meetings, all our discussions are as open as possible and as transparent as possible. I'm willing to have meetings that are open to any and all to attend. As stated, I will also be one of the co-chairs along with the CDC. And then lastly, let me also say this. If we don't take this action today, we don't create the fund that allows for all this other stuff to happen, right? We have to have a minimum guidelines put in place to set up the fund so that when BPG goes to closing, we can have money put in. What I'll lastly say, and this is truly last, these guidelines do not have to be the end all be all. The URA, time in and time out, has many times adopted programs and adopted guidelines. Then there's conversations, and we've done this with the Housing Opportunity Fund as one example. Then there's conversations around the leadership around that table that says, actually, there's a higher and better way to do this. And we then amend those guidelines. We will have the opportunity to work with the community to do so. And so I just wanted the community to be rest assured that their concerns don't go unheard. And for all those reasons, I'm done. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. Obviously, no need to apologize. Representative Gainey.
Yeah, first I want to thank Daniel for that, going down and giving the historical context on exactly how we got here. I appreciate that. But going forward too, also believe that we need to put in some more work to make sure that the community get what they want in regards to investment. You know, we've talked about that quite a bit. We want to make sure that that occurs going forward. Going forward, we want to make sure that we talk about whether that's a surcharge, whether that's the OZ fund or excess with the LERTA, how that's going to be distributed into investment in the Hill District. So I'm looking forward to working with you to ensure that going forward that we have the proper investment for the Hill to grow. But there has to be some community benefits agreement going forward for the Hill District that we can still see the Hill District developing right before us.
Thank you. Dr. Powell, any questions, anything to add?
Have any questions, and appreciate the councilman and representative, for both the history and comments. I would probably just echo the sentiment that's been said several times here, is that there is no way that the URA would ever be able to go back in history and undo some of the racist and terrible actions that have tore apart the Hill District, right? But at this juncture, where we're at, and this board, what we've been trying to do is to ensure that with this project, which is the councilman already, detailed and illuminated, was kind of, lopsided at the very beginning. But with this deal, that we've been able to work and partner with the developer to pull out community benefits that will not just live with the towers going up, but will invest in the community as a whole, and will be seen 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. I will also say to the representative's point about continued partnership, continued community engagement, that we still have more blocks to take down. There are still more conversations that have to be had about this deal and other opportunities to, again, see how the developer, the city, the URA can continue to pour into the Hill District and its residents. And so, I'm appreciative of staff in particular who have taken a lot of time, to make sure that we're able to uplift and include community voice and community input in this process. I ultimately want to thank community members who've been here long before I have had the privilege of sitting in this seat, fighting for this deal and putting it together, and who continue to show up day after day after day to make sure that we're doing right by them. And so appreciate everyone's input, hard work, and concerns, but echoing again that we do have a long way to go before the deal is finally concluded.
Fully agree with everything that's been said so far. I would like to echo a couple of things that Councilman Lavelle lifted up in his remarks. First, the support that we have that's been generated from the public for this project is pretty evident. I want to really acknowledge and thank the incredible level of public input that we've received today, 2 weeks ago, a year ago, the first time this parcel came before us, and really like on an ongoing basis for the entire time in between. But it's really important, I think, to acknowledge that not only, as the councilman said, have the vast majority of the public input that we've received been positive and urged us to move forward at this stage, to the tune of 60-5, as the councilman said. Literally, it's like 60-5 is the kind of like tally, if you actually look through what will be posted publicly, of the comments that we've received urging us to advance this project to this point. But Councilman Lavelle's leadership cannot be understated in this conversation. He has pushed every step of the way to ensure that this developer invests in the community, that they come back to the table over and over and over again to invest in the Greater Hill District in meaningful ways. But we also heard from Representative Wheatley's office today and 2 weeks ago, urging us to move forward, and Councilman Walton is also supportive. So all of the elected leadership of the Hill District have urged approval at this point. And we've heard over and over again that leadership and residents of the Hill District are supportive. I also just want to kind of revisit just briefly this $10 sale price issue, because it's kind of hard to understate like how crazy this was initially and how mind-boggling this was, right? So the councilman gave an incredible historical overview of what it was, but it's worth just saying again, like under the original deal, the Penguins got $15 million from the public to do nothing other than sit there and collect parking revenue for years and years and years on end. If they did nothing, we would have paid them $15 million on top of paying them the right to collect parking revenue for years and years and years. And if they did develop under that original deal, then we would have been paying them to take this incredibly valuable, precious land off of the public's hands, because the appraised value of the land would have been less than the $15 million in credit that Governor Rendell and Mayor Ravenstahl and County Executive Honorado had given them. So when the deal was renegotiated, back in 2018, and that provision was taken out, that was a significant victory for the public. Saved millions and millions of dollars for the public, millions and millions of dollars that can be invested in other ways in the Hill District and in other important developments. And the choice in front of us now is really not whether or not we like the $10 sale price. That's part of an agreement that exists, and that if we were to challenge today, would throw this entire development in jeopardy and land the URA and the SEA and the city, probably all three of us, into a legal dispute in which we would, instead of investing resources in community development and trying to invest in Black business districts and putting people to work and investing in community redevelopment, we would be spending probably millions of dollars in a legal dispute over our refusal to abide by an option agreement that's already in place and that is already legally binding. I think probably all of us wish that we could go back and renegotiate the sales price. we'd probably love to get market rate price for this development and still tell them that they need to deliver on every single community benefit that they've negotiated and every single promise that they've made, because that is what they ought to do. That's what they owe, quite frankly. But that's simply, unfortunately, not the choice in front of us. It was the choice that was made to get rid of the $15 million credit was one to take a terrible, unconscionable deal in which we were going to pay them to do nothing or pay them to take our land from us, into one in which, they're going to get the land and they're going to get the land for less than what it's worth, but we will have public resources to invest in other ways and be able to actually advance this project, move it forward, have development take place in the Lower Hill, and generate all these other benefits for the neighborhood at the same time. And the final thing I just want to say before I have one question for staff actually is to also acknowledge, very sincerely, the public concern that we've heard over the structure of the LERTA guidelines. We heard a lot today. We heard more, frankly, 2 weeks ago, questioning specifically the CDC's role in being named as co-chair and the 4% of LERTA proceeds that will be set aside for operating expenses for the CDC. And I think the councilman gave us a really helpful historic overview of why that is the case. But I also think it's worth noting that CDCs all across the city do incredible work, do like really vital work for our neighborhoods to make sure that development doesn't happen in ways, to try to make sure that development doesn't happen in ways that don't listen to and respect community voices and what the residents of the community want for themselves. And CDCs in Black neighborhoods specifically are under-resourced and have a much harder time securing funding than their counterparts in white neighborhoods across the city and across the country. And so I fully support the decision to name the CDC based on the role that they've played in securing the LERTA in the first place as co-chair. And I also support, based on the historic economic inequities that we've seen in funding CDCs in Black neighborhoods, a decision on the front end to try to rectify that by ensuring that the Hill CDC will get operating expenses on an ongoing basis. With that said, I do have a question for council about one thing that we heard that that kind of, I don't know, stuck out for me in the presentation, which is that the proposed redeveloper of G-1, this office, the Office Partners 23 Block G-1 LLC is being set up as a Delaware corporation, which I suppose is not terribly surprising since BPG is based in Delaware. But it does make me question, in the context of a more than decade-long fight to close the Delaware loophole in the state that Representative Daney and his colleagues have led, but I think not been successful in closing because it's been blocked by Republicans every step of the way. It does make me question whether the fact that the ownership of the G-1 is set up as a Delaware corporation will require any further action on our part to ensure that they pay Pennsylvania taxes. I can't imagine that I don't know. I would hope, let me put it this way, I can't imagine, that's why I'm raising the question, but I would hope that a developer in this context would not be seeking to take public land and public will that's been generated in this process and avoid paying their fair share in Pennsylvania taxes by setting themselves up as a Delaware corporation. But I guess the question for council is do we need to do anything to ensure that that doesn't happen? Because certainly being a Delaware corporation is fine, but we got to make sure that they actually pay the taxes here also.
Sure. Just one point of clarification. You were using corporation. They're a limited liability company.
Sorry.
As the board knows, we at the URA don't have any taxing authority. Our agreements absolutely do require corporations to and limited liability companies and partnerships to comply with all existing state and federal rules. So as it's currently set up, to the extent that Pennsylvania law would require the redeveloper or any of their equity owners to pay tax in Pennsylvania, they would be required to do that, and failure to do so would be a violation of their disposition agreement with the SEA and the URA.
Okay.
What would the recourse be?
With the disposition contract that the parties have negotiated, it's very close to the URA standard disposition contract. So there's kind of a series of escalating consequences for violating provisions and being in breach of the disposition contract. Everything from actually being required to pay amounts that aren't due, giving the parties an ability to go get a judgment, to in extreme cases where violations continue, to triggering a reverter clause.
But if state law continues to allow LLCs or corporations, either one, to use Delaware essentially as a tax shelter, then nothing in our agreement stops them from doing that currently. And is there a caveat we can place that ensures that they're gonna cross file? I can't remember the technical term for it, but that they're gonna actually pay taxes if they actually owed any. I mean, it presumes that they're actually going to generate income on the building that they would pay taxes on. But if they did, is there something that we can do that ensures that that they're actually going to pay what they would in Pennsylvania if they were a PA, as if they were a PA corporation?
Right. Since they will be owning property in Pennsylvania, they will have to register, which I believe, and I will have to confirm this for the board, but I believe that requires them to then file a return. And I think the current threshold in Pennsylvania is around $500,000 of income. If they generate that, then I believe they would be required to pay taxes on it.
Okay. Would it be technically and legally acceptable if we conditioned the first action, board approval, the second board action, final approval of Office Partners 23, et cetera, as redeveloper, on confirmation that despite being a Delaware LLC, they will pay appropriate taxes in Pennsylvania?
Yes, it would not be inappropriate to do that. Again, I think the key is appropriate taxes. So to the extent that any are appropriately due under Pennsylvania law, we can certainly condition our approval on requiring them to pay those.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns that board members want to express?
Sam, I just want to thank you for bringing up the Delaware loophole. I think that's very important. I think that's critical. And those are things going forward. Again, we got to be more cognizant of as we continue to move this forward.
Thank you. So if there are no other questions or comments or anything the board wants to discuss, then I think procedurally, we would take the first there. Thank you. Take item number 1 on the screen there first, final board approval pursuant to the comprehensive option agreement of a conceptual development plan for the takedown of block G-1, and entertain a motion on that item singularly.
Can we take all can we take all 4 votes for
Well,
block?
I want to make it, I want to add a condition to number 2
Oh,
on the Delaware loophole. So then we would have to do that as an independent vote. And then, but then moving on, then we could put 3 and 4 together and then do the next 4 all as block.
Motion to approve item 1.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. I would recommend that we add a condition to the second one, which is the approval of this LLC as the redeveloper, that places it upon confirmation that this Delaware LLC will not only pay all appropriate taxes in the state of Pennsylvania, but not utilize what's commonly known as the Delaware loophole to avoid paying taxes in Pennsylvania.
So moved.
Motioned with that amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Then I think we can consolidate 3 into 4 into a single motion, which is the final approval of G-1 and authorizing the officers and agents of the URA to take all actions to execute documents.
Motion to approve 3 and 4.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So then, unless there are similar concerns or anything we need to address on G4, can you move to, there we go. I think we can take all 4 of these as a single motion.
Motion to approve items 1 through 4.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And finally, the items were all related to the LERTA, I think can also be voted probably all together. So it's an authorization to amend the LERTA by entering into First Amendment to the Declaration for Restrictive Covenants, approval of the Lower Hill LERTA retained amount guidelines, and approval of the opportunities application for the retained amount investments. And then finally, approval of the Greater Hill Reinvestment Fund guidelines, which are the guidelines that will allow the public to provide input and control over how those millions and millions of dollars are reinvested into the Greater Hill District.
Motion to approve items 1 through 4.
Second.
Motion is seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's the last, is that the last slide? I guess the last slide is a reminder that our regular, due to today's, because today would have been the normal day for us to hold a regularly scheduled URA board meeting. The regular June board meeting, which we have normal monthly business, will take place a week from today, June 17th at 2 p.m. I just want to, I don't know, close by once again thanking the public for the incredible amount of thoughtful input that we have received every step of the way in this project. Thank the board for the incredible amount of time and attention that's been put into this, grappling with these issues, and reiterate what Director Powell said earlier, which is that there are more parcels to come. And every step of the way, we will continue to do everything possible, everything within our power to ensure investments in the Greater Hill District and to ensure that the redevelopment of the Lower Hill actually benefits the Hill District as a whole. Thank you also, maybe most importantly, to the URA staff who have worked on this for years, from Executive Director Listrom to Deputy Director Walker to the staff who have put innumerable hours into community meetings, into, you know, parsing the documents, figuring out that what's technically accurate and not, ensuring that the developer actually complies with every single technicality of the 200+ page option agreement. Julie Edwards in particular, James Reed have done incredible work. You know, Hannah moving this thing along, making sure that the interests of the public and the interests of the Hill District are centered in every single discussion that we have with the developer or internally around this development. So it is, you know, cannot say enough about the hard work that those folks have done on behalf of the public to move this thing along. So on behalf of the board, I just want to thank every single one of you. And with that, unless there's other comments or questions from the board, I think a motion to adjourn would be appropriate at this time.
So move.
Second.
Favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.